Ryan's cheating wife had come crawling back, hoping to reconcile, but by then, her best friend had already taken her place. Ryan stood frozen, voices reaching his ears from the other side of the house. It took him a moment to realize the familiar sound belonged to his wife's friend, Katie. He inched closer to the patio door, trying to hear more clearly. He had just returned home from his usual Saturday golf outing, though the game had been cut short by a bout of Montezuma's revenge, almost embarrassing himself on the fourth hole. Figuring it was best to stick close to a bathroom for the rest of the day, he wandered over to the sliding glass door and peeked outside. Through the screen, he spotted his wife lounging by the pool with 3 of her closest friends, all sipping on mimosas. His wife was stretched out on her sunbed, her back to the door. Katie sat to her right, Alex directly across from her, while Tina and Anna lay sprawled on towels by the poolside. Ryan kept himself hidden, listening closely without drawing attention. The quiet was interrupted by Lisa, his wife, whose voice broke the stillness. "I'm sorry, Beeks, but I can't stop thinking about it. It's all I've been imagining. I just need to know what it feels like inside me. You guys all talk about it." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "And I'll keep it quiet so Ryan doesn't find out. I won't be like Tiffany." Tiffany, notorious among their friends, was always spinning wild tales of her many conquests, entertaining the group with stories from her wild nights out. "He'll figure it out eventually." "They always do," Katie responded, a touch of regret creeping into her tone. "Look at what happened to me. Tiffany's full of it. I've been divorced for 3 years now, and I regret every single bad choice I made because of her. She ruined me, and she'll do the same to you if you let her." Ryan's stomach churned as his wife replied, "It's just one time. I just need to see if being with a guy like that is as amazing as Tiffany keeps saying." Tina, who had been married just as long as Ryan and Lisa, chimed in, "It's not like you think. Back in college, I hooked up with a guy who was, well, let's just say really well endowed." She glanced around and continued. "But then I met Tom and realized he was the one who could love me properly. That guy. He was boring as hell. All he had going for him was sports. No romance, no real connection. It was empty." She paused, taking a sip from her drink. "That's all there was to him." Samantha, the only one of them who had never been married, cut in with a warning, "I told you before, when you started coming with us on girls' night, don't get wrapped up with some guy just because you dance with him. Those men are there for hookups, not just a dance partner. And now look, you've crossed a line. Whether you admit it or not, you're involved with this guy." "I'm not involved with him," Lisa snapped defensively. "We just grab drinks, dance, have fun. That's it." She hesitated for a beat. "Until last night." The group went silent, tension hanging in the air. Then Lisa spoke again, her voice quieter but laced with excitement. "He's been bragging about how big he is, wanting to take things further. I held off for a while, but then, he showed me. And now, I can't stop thinking about it." A grin crept onto her face, clearly thrilled by the memory. Katie leaned in, her voice more serious now. "Listen to me, Tiffany isn't living some fairy tale with a new guy every night. She's miserable, just like I've been. I can see you heading down the same road. I'd give anything to have someone like Ryan. He's kind, successful, a great dad. Don't throw it all away." Katie stood up, wrapping her towel tighter around herself. "If you don't want Ryan anymore, I'll gladly step in. I would do anything to be with him." Lisa looked at Katie earnestly. "I just need to do this once, and then I'm done." Katie shook her head with a sad smile. "It's never just once. I've been there. I know." Ryan's earlier sickness was all but forgotten as he listened, his stomach now roiling from something far worse than Montezuma's revenge. Rage surged through him. His wife, the woman he'd been married to for over 20 years, was plotting to sleep with some random guy she'd met at a club. It was insane. In a flash of fury, Ryan shoved the screen door off its track and stormed over to the pool. His wife barely had time to react before he grabbed her by the arm, yanking her up out of her seat. Lisa whipped around, startled to see her husband's face twisted with fury, his rage plain for all her friends to witness. In one swift motion, Ryan grabbed her left hand and yanked off both her wedding and engagement rings. "My rings!" she cried out, eyes wide. "You're no wife of mine anymore," Ryan spat back at her, venom in his voice. "Go be with your lover tonight." Still seething, he hurled the rings over the roof, sending them flying toward the street. "Go run to your big-shot boyfriend with his big tool," he added, his voice shaking with anger. "I heard everything. I knew something was off with those girls' nights, but I can't believe you're actually involved with some loser you picked up at a bar." Lisa collapsed to the ground, sobbing, overwhelmed by the situation. Samantha was the first to get to her feet, trying to calm Ryan down. "Take it easy, Jax," she said cautiously. "Lisa hasn't really done anything that bad. Ryan wasn't having any of it." "That's nonsense," he snapped, glaring at her. "To hell with all of you. You knew exactly what you were getting her into, especially you, Samantha." His finger shot out, pointing directly at her. "Since you're all here, you can help pack her stuff and get her out of my house. Now." Tina gave him one of her signature manipulative smiles and tried to smooth things over. "Come on, you don't really mean that," she said softly, resting her hand on his chest. Ryan's patience had hit its limit. Without a second thought, he shoved her, sending her stumbling backward right into the pool with a splash. "I'm leaving for an hour," he announced, storming toward the house. "And I don't want this woman in my house when I get back." Just before stepping inside, he turned back and added, "And, Katie, I heard you. I'm looking forward to our dates, but I won't be sleeping with you until after the divorce. You okay with losing these friendships?" Katie straightened up, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "Absolutely. No problem," she replied, a grin spreading across her face. She'd learned from her past mistakes. It was a lesson that came too late for her, but learned nonetheless. A week later, Lisa's reckless desires were fulfilled during another girls' night. Katie watched her meet up with the guy she had been talking about, immediately recognizing him as one of those sleazy types who prey on married women at clubs. In fact, he used to be roommates with the guy who had seduced Katie years earlier, a decision she still deeply regretted. As she observed the scene, Katie knew Lisa's life was about to take a drastic turn, just like hers had. And though a sense of guilt gnawed at her for not stopping Lisa, she understood all too well that once Lisa made up her mind, there was no changing it. Beeks regretted not taking more pictures sooner. She had been secretly documenting Lisa's behavior at these nights out, initially hoping to prevent her from making the same mistakes she had. Now, though, it felt more like she was gathering evidence to steal Lisa's husband for herself. Maybe she was, she thought with a twinge of conflicted satisfaction. That night, Lisa didn't even bother dancing with her date. She shot a glance at her friends and told them she'd catch up with them later. With that, she slipped away, greeting the man and leaving the club together. In the dingy, cluttered apartment of her new lover, Lisa felt a nervous excitement she hadn't experienced in over 20 years. This was the first time she was about to be with someone other than Ryan since they'd been married. As she walked toward him, the man's eyes immediately caught her bare fingers. "Put your rings back on," he said with a sly grin. "I want to see them on your hand while we're doing this." "I can't," Lisa replied, her voice faltering. "Ryan ripped them off when he kicked me out last weekend." "Why'd he do that?" he asked, suddenly suspicious. "You cheating on him with someone else?" "No." Lisa shot back, trying to defend herself. "He overheard me talking to my friends about wanting to be with you, so he took the rings and threw me out." A flicker of interest returned to her lover's eyes. Beeks had been right, he probably only got off on the thrill of sleeping with married women. "Isn't this what you wanted?" she asked, trying to reignite the excitement in the room. He hesitated, glancing at her, still attractive but with the allure quickly fading. Without her being married, she might latch onto him, and that was something he definitely didn't want. "Here's the deal," he said after a moment. "I'll give you what you're after tonight, but then you gotta leave. I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm into married women for the no-strings fun. Nothing more." Lisa didn't care about his fitness or whether he could match up to Ryan. She was fixated on getting exactly what she came for, and that was all that mattered to her in the moment. After a while, he nudged her aside and led her to the bed, not wasting a second before thrusting himself as deep as he could. Lisa let out a gasp, the pain catching her off guard. "How was it?" "You loved it," he smirked arrogantly as he headed to the bathroom to clean himself up. Lisa followed, sitting on the toilet while he washed up. Lisa's disappointment weighed on her. Despite his size, the experience had been underwhelming, much like her very first time. As she made her way back to Samantha's apartment, she realized barely an hour had passed since she'd left the club with him. If it had been Ryan, they would have been cuddling after making love by now. A wave of sadness hit her, and tears began to roll down her cheeks as she caught an Uber back to Samantha's empty place, feeling lonelier than ever. Ryan, on the other hand, spent the week gearing up for his new chapter in life. Some might call him cold, but this was his way of handling things, compartmentalizing, putting everything into neat boxes in his mind. With a thriving business to run, he had the luxury of delegating most tasks, freeing up time to focus on what truly mattered. Even though they'd been together for over 20 years, he wasn't looking for revenge in the divorce. Lisa had changed, spending more and more time with her friends, constantly craving those girls' nights. Ryan had grown weary of the endless poolside gatherings and the shallow conversations that followed. While Lisa was busy with her affair, Ryan was 2 hours away, sitting down to dinner with their son at college. He had wanted to break the news about the divorce man-to-man, hoping to avoid any future misunderstandings. He knew their son might see things from a different perspective, but Ryan wanted to be upfront. The next day, Saturday, he returned home after lunch with his son, hoping the visit hadn't distracted him too much from his studies. Meanwhile, back at Samantha's, she was grilling Dee about her night with her lover. Dee confessed, disappointment lacing her words. The experience hadn't been anything like she'd hoped for. After hearing the wild stories from Candace and Samantha, she had expected something exciting, something fulfilling, but instead, all she got was soreness and frustration. Samantha, never one to let things go, assured her that she just needed the right partner and already had some guys in mind. She had dated 2 men who knew about each other, and she was convinced she could set up a double date for them. That night, after dinner and a bit of dancing, the 2 couples returned to Samantha's apartment. Samantha, of course, got her pick of the 2 men, and the one left over was more than happy to entertain Lisa. They fooled around on the couch for a while, but it wasn't long before Dee felt disappointment settling in again. His clumsy attempts left her feeling unfulfilled, and she started to wonder if this was her future now, unsatisfying encounters with men who cared only for their own pleasure. Fed up, she pushed him off and headed to the bathroom for a shower, needing to wash away the dirtiness she felt. As she stood under the warm water, letting the soap lather her skin, a sudden cool breeze alerted her to the presence of someone else. Before she could react, he grabbed her. She struggled, but his sheer size overpowered her. In desperation, she grabbed the soap dish and smashed it against his head, watching as he slumped to the floor. Scrambling, she climbed onto the toilet seat, screaming for Samantha at the top of her lungs. While Lisa stood there, perched on the toilet seat and waiting for help, Ryan was fast asleep on the couch back home. He'd been sleeping there ever since he kicked her out, unable to bring himself to lie in the bed they had once shared. The thought of other men possibly being there with her made him sick. He was jolted awake by a knock at the door. Groggy, still in his boxers and a t-shirt, Ryan stumbled to the door, opening it without even bothering to check who it was. Standing there, in the dim light of the porch, was Tiffany, the so-called queen of promiscuity. Tiffany was undeniably stunning, with her petite frame and a body that turned heads wherever she went. She owned a successful fitness franchise, specializing in helping overweight people get back in shape. But to Ryan, she was always just a pretty face with a toxic soul. It was past 1 a.m., and she was standing there in a revealing black dress that left little to the imagination, flaunting her assets like she always did. Ryan's frown deepened as he saw Tiffany standing there. "What do you want?" She gave him one of her signature smiles, the kind that usually got her what she wanted. "I figured you might need some company tonight, and I'm here to offer my services." Her hand slid up to touch him, a bold move. "Very nice, Jax. This'll do just fine." Ryan firmly removed her hand and shook his head. "Not happening. Go home." She pouted, adopting a playful tone. "Oh, come on. I heard you and Dee split, so why not have a little fun?" Without hesitation, Ryan pushed her back and shut the door firmly in her face, ignoring the smile she still wore as she walked away. The next morning, Ryan did something he hadn't done in 20 years, he cleaned himself up and went to church. Though he'd grown up Baptist, he opted for a nearby non-denominational service this time. He arrived early and chose a seat near the back, hoping to stay out of everyone's way. The sermon centered around letting God guide you toward becoming a better person and helping others, and it stirred something in Ryan. Despite all his success, he realized he hadn't felt fulfilled when it came to giving back. Maybe mentoring youth could make a difference, he thought. Feeling uplifted, he returned home, only to find Lisa waiting on the front steps, visibly upset. As soon as she saw him, she stood up and started shouting, demanding to know where he had been and why she couldn't get into the house. Ryan stayed calm. "I went to church instead of messing around. Maybe you should think about finding one too. Plenty of men there, I'm sure," he added dryly. He unlocked the door, and Lisa followed him inside, wasting no time expressing her desire to move back in. "I'm done with Samantha's lifestyle," she declared, her voice pleading. "No, you're not coming back here," Ryan interrupted, his tone firm. "I've released you from your vows you were going to break anyway, if you haven't already." Lisa opened her mouth to protest, but Ryan cut her off. "How was your time with the big guy?" he asked sharply. "I didn't," she started, but Ryan cut her off again. "Don't lie to me. I know you too well. I can tell you've been with him since you left." Her mind flashed back to the warning Ryan had given her about those girls' nights with her friends last year. He had made it clear it would eventually lead to infidelity, whether she admitted it or not. She hated to admit that he had been right all along. He'd always said it wasn't right for married people to act like they were single, especially when it could jeopardize his business. As Lisa reached out to hug him, Ryan stepped back, stopping her. "Tomorrow, Kelly, my new assistant, will send you a list of affordable apartments. You can take the bedroom furniture and anything else you need." Tears began streaming down her face, her voice breaking. "I can't make it on my own. You have to help me." Ryan remained firm. "You didn't have to work, I made enough money. But you insisted on getting a job, and yet you've saved nothing. You spend your paycheck the moment you get it. That's going to have to change. Plenty of families live on less than what you earn. You'll need to learn how to manage your finances better." He escorted her to her car. "You'll be served divorce papers at work on Wednesday. Unless you'd prefer a quieter option, then you can visit my lawyer's office on Tuesday." On Wednesday, Lisa received the papers at work, still hoping against hope that Ryan wouldn't go through with the divorce. After over 2 decades together, she had usually been able to sway him in the end. But this time, she was learning the hard way, a Ryan who loves you is very different from a Ryan who's chosen to stop. That evening, Tina hosted a small get-together, with the girls gathering to drown Lisa's sorrows in too much alcohol and no food. Tiffany arrived with more booze, oblivious to the gloomy atmosphere in the room. "I didn't realize this was a party," she said with a laugh as she walked in. As the drinks kept flowing and the group grew more intoxicated, tongues began to loosen. Tiffany, feeling emboldened, openly shared her intentions toward Ryan. The drunken group burst into laughter, with Tina chiming in, "Beeks has dibs on that." Tiffany stood up, running her hands suggestively down her body. "Does she really think her mom bod can compete with this?" she teased, clearly full of herself. Admitting her failed attempt to seduce Ryan, she smirked and continued, "What were you thinking, Lisa? Your man's packing some serious heat, I've felt it. I know quality when I get my hands on it. Maybe I'll marry Jax. I wouldn't even have to work, just keep him happy and enjoy the good life." Her grin widened as she added, "Or maybe I'll marry him, have my fun, and then divorce him. You know I can't stay faithful for long." For the first time, Lisa was starting to realize the full weight of her actions as Lisa kept downing drinks, sinking deeper into her own mess. Meanwhile, over at Ryan's, he was greeting Beeks and her kids at the door, holding a casserole dish. "Thought you could use a friend tonight," she said kindly. They ate together out on the patio, where the conversation naturally turned to Ryan's feelings about asking Lisa to leave. "I'm sure you know the others are with her right now, trying to help her deal with being served the papers today," Beeks said. "But I wanted to be here with you instead." Ryan nodded, appreciating her company. Beeks didn't stay long since her kids had school the next day. Before she left, she leaned in and gave him a soft kiss on the lips. Ryan smiled as they parted. It was a kiss that lingered just enough to leave an impression, one that carried a hint of temptation. Around 1:30 a.m., Ryan was abruptly awakened by a drunken call from Lisa. Her voice swung between sobbing and cursing, demanding to know why he didn't love her anymore. To Ryan, it was painfully obvious: if she had loved him as much as she claimed, she wouldn't have been out at clubs, doing who knows what. After the third call, Ryan turned off his phone's ringer, deciding to deal with her tomorrow when she'd hopefully be sober. By 11 o'clock the next morning, Ryan called her. But Lisa didn't even acknowledge her drunken calls from the night before, let alone apologize. Instead, she focused on asking to move back in. "No," Ryan said firmly. "Our marriage is over. You've been with other men, and you didn't even wait until you were officially served to start sleeping around. Was it worth it? A whole week and you couldn't resist." As he spoke, there was a knock at the door. Ryan glanced over to see Beeks standing there, holding a paper bag. He gestured for her to wait a moment while he finished the call. "Lisa, you wanted other men, so I'm giving you the single life you seem to want so badly. Sign the papers. If you don't meet with Kelly tomorrow, I'll pick an apartment for you. I'll cover the first 2 months' rent, after that, you're on your own. Gotta go, Beeks just brought me lunch." He hung up without waiting for a response. By 6 that evening, Samantha was fed up with Lisa's endless complaints. "Girl, you've got to face facts. Beeks isn't stealing your man. Let's be real here, you wanted that guy's bigger tool, and you got it. But what did Ryan get? He figured out he can't give you what you want after 20 years of marriage. No man's going to want to put up with that. The Ryan I know. He's not taking you back." Lisa didn't want to hear it, but Samantha didn't stop. She gave her a sharp look. "Why would he? You've always gone after what you want, that's just who you are. And trust me, I'm no saint. You messed up, and now you expect Ryan to act like none of it happened? Be grateful he doesn't know everything you've done." She softened her tone slightly. "Come on, change into something nice. Let's get you out of this funk and cheer you up." 2 weeks passed, and Lisa found herself let down by several new partners. By Monday evening after work, Tom and Tina helped Lisa move into the apartment Ryan had arranged for her. He had even furnished it with her favorite bedroom set and other familiar items from their home. The place was freshly painted, clean, and the fridge was fully stocked. Tom, ever the dutiful husband, carried in Lisa's boxes of clothes. At Tina's request, he hung up what needed hanging and opened the tubs filled with folded items. Later that evening, he returned with takeout, and they all spent the night together, keeping Lisa company on her first night in the new place. Tina knew what Lisa was hoping for, that Ryan would miss her, that he'd come crawling back, and they could return to their perfect life. But Tina also knew the truth. Lisa was just trying to delay the inevitable divorce, hoping against hope that things would go back to the way they were. Tina kept quiet about Beeks having lunch with Ryan regularly, knowing that bringing it up would only add fuel to the fire for Lisa. Instead, she suggested a housewarming girls' night at Lisa's new place for Friday. When she called Beeks, her tone was upbeat. "Hey sis, we're having a little gathering at Lisa's new place on Friday. You should come. It's been a while." Beeks hesitated. "I'd love to, but the kids' dad hasn't been able to take them for the last few months. He's been working out of town." She paused, thinking. "But I guess I should come. You never know when I might need my security deposit back if the boys end up wrecking the place." Ryan, on the other hand, had been thoroughly enjoying his lunches with Beeks. He knew she understood his need to stay focused, given that he rarely left the office for lunch and usually packed his own meals. It was that discipline, those little habits, that likely contributed to his success. Beeks worked just a couple of blocks from Ryan's office, and though they didn't meet for lunch every day, he appreciated the time they spent together. She was, after all, the only one of Lisa's friends he genuinely liked. The others? He tolerated them, mainly for the sake of peace. During their Thursday lunch, Beeks asked Ryan if he could watch her boys so she could attend the housewarming party at Lisa's. Without a second thought, Ryan agreed. He actually liked spending time with Beeks' sons, 3 boys, 13, 15, and 16, who saw Ryan as the cool uncle. They played basketball together, which helped him fill the void left by not being able to spend time with his own son as much. Instead of Beeks dropping off the kids, Ryan picked them up himself, taking them to the batting cages and go-kart racing. It was a welcome distraction for all of them. That evening, Beeks arrived at Lisa's new place, taking a deep breath before knocking on the door. "Come in," came the response from inside. As she peered through the doorway, she spotted Tina and Samantha already inside, wine glasses raised. But just as Beeks was about to step through the door, Tiffany barged past her, announcing loudly, "Hey ladies." She was already a bit tipsy, and the sound of a flushing toilet echoed from nearby. Lisa entered the room next, and there was an unspoken tension between her and Beeks, a tension that wouldn't stay silent for long as more wine and whiskey shots were passed around. Drunk and emboldened, Tina suggested they all work together to help Lisa win Ryan back. This suggestion stung Beeks deeply. Her feelings for Ryan were real, not just a fleeting crush. Tipsy Tiffany jumped in, suggesting that Lisa wouldn't be able to win Ryan back unless she slept with him first. "When I touched it, it felt perfect," she boasted, her grin widening. "Not too big, not too small. Just right." Beeks, fed up with Tiffany's crude comments, called her out. But Tiffany, never one to back down, turned the tables, mocking Beeks for her supposed interest in Ryan. She insinuated that as a single mother, Beeks was just looking for a new father figure for her kids, hinting that Ryan, now an empty nester, wouldn't be interested in raising someone else's children. Beeks had always known her friends could be shallow, something her ex had often pointed out. But hearing Tiffany talk about Ryan like that was a step too far. Before Beeks could respond, Lisa grabbed her by the hair, yelling at her to stay away from Ryan. She accused Beeks of sneaking out of Ryan's office during their lunch breaks. Pushed toward the door by Lisa's outburst, Beeks finally unleashed what she had been holding back for years. She spoke her mind for the first time in front of the group. "You know what, Lisa?" Beeks began, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Ryan's not yours anymore. You threw him away when you chose to be with other men. And now you want him back like nothing happened. She shook her head, disgusted. You don't even understand the value of being faithful. Her eyes turned toward Tina. And your casual attitude toward cheating. I know your husband loves and admires you, but it's like you don't even care. You'll never understand the damage you're doing until it's too late. Then she turned to Samantha. You're so superficial, Sam. You think your looks and your cruelty will get you a husband, but no man wants to be with someone who's that shallow. And finally, she set her sights on Tiffany. And Tiffany, if every tool you've ever had stuck out of your body, you'd look like a damn porcupine. The room fell silent for a moment, stunned by Beek's words. After a pause, she continued, her voice resolute. I've held back on pursuing Ryan. I wanted to give him space, to let him figure things out. But not anymore. I'm going after your husband, Lisa. Once he's mine, he won't even remember any of you, Beeks declared, her voice steady with confidence. Finding a good husband is tough, but he'll never regret choosing me, I can promise you that. With those words, she slammed the door behind her and walked out. Beeks drove home, but as she sat in her quiet apartment, she felt the weight of the silence. Her boys were with Ryan, and the emptiness of the place only amplified her loneliness. Not wanting to be alone any longer, she decided to call Ryan. He answered with a cheerful tone, telling her to come down and join them. They were about to head to the batting cages soon, and he joked about how sore his butt was from the go-karts earlier. When Beeks arrived at the batting cages, she found Ryan and her boys already there, laughing and having a great time. She sat on the benches outside, watching her older sons take their turns while Ryan coached her youngest. A smile crept across her face as she watched them all bond so naturally. Ryan caught her eye from inside the cage and grinned, motioning for her to come join them. Without a word, he handed her a batting helmet, but she initially waved it off, insisting she wasn't much of a batter. Her kids, however, weren't about to let her off that easily, and soon enough, she was standing with a bat on her shoulder, ready to give it a shot. The pitches came, and she swung at them, missing each one by a mile. Ryan stepped behind her, gently adjusting her stance. His closeness was palpable as he guided her through the next swing, and this time, she made contact with the ball, not a hit, but not a complete miss either. With Ryan's presence steady behind her, she felt safe, her heart racing not from nerves but from something else. Though she never quite managed to hit the ball properly, she hadn't laughed that hard in years, tears rolling down her cheeks as they all shared the moment. It was in that laughter, in that warmth, that Beeks realized she had fallen for Ryan. As she drove home, Ryan followed behind her car, a wide grin plastered on his face. Even though she insisted he didn't need to follow them back to her apartment, he was more than happy to help get her boys and their belongings inside. The next morning, Ryan casually asked if she'd like to grab breakfast together, and she eagerly agreed. On his drive home, Ryan's phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Apparently, the girls had ended up in the drunk tank after causing trouble out on the town. They'd been clubbing, and someone, likely Lisa, had been caught driving under the influence. Ryan shook his head, deciding they could sit there and learn their lesson. He wasn't about to bail them out, especially not if Lisa was risking a DUI. Their insurance would go through the roof if that happened. Over breakfast, Ryan and Beeks continued to grow closer, their conversation flowing naturally. Beeks recounted what had happened the night before at Lisa's house, including the confrontation with the other women. Ryan chuckled, now understanding why she had left early. He secretly hoped it had been because of him. It felt selfish, sure, but everyone craves a bit of attention and validation sometimes. After a quiet moment, Ryan confessed, "Last night, when I was holding you at the batting cages, it felt right. I'm guessing you felt it too." Beeks nodded, her cheeks flushing a soft pink. "I did. I felt safe with you, cared for." She hesitated for a moment before continuing, "To be honest, I've had a crush on you for years, but now, I think it's more than that. I think I'm in love with you." I know you're still married, but I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. She reached into her handbag and pulled out an envelope, her expression serious. Look, I know my past isn't perfect, and if you have any doubts, I understand. But after you asked Lisa to leave and I told you I'd do anything to be with you, I knew I had to show my commitment. She handed him the envelope. I got tested for STDs the Monday after you asked her to leave, just to prove I'm clean. I haven't been with anyone in over a year. Ryan took the envelope, impressed by her honesty. Katie, he began, using her real name for a moment of sincerity, I've seen you go through a lot. I was there during the tough times before your divorce. I've always known you were a good person, but I could never figure out why you kept going out at night, especially when it was part of what led to your divorce. Beeks looked down, her voice soft as she answered. You might not understand it now, and I hope you never have to, but when you're divorced with kids, dating becomes impossible. You still want to feel wanted, to feel desired, even when you know you're not someone's forever. A woman still needs that closeness. It's as simple as that, Beeks said, lifting her eyes to meet his. But I learned from all that. Being a good mother became more important to me than just hooking up. I thought if I worked on bettering myself, maybe I'd start attracting the right kind of man. Ryan nodded, then asked the question he'd been curious about for a while. Why did you let Lisa tag along on those nights out? Beeks appreciated Ryan's straightforwardness, knowing he expected nothing less than honesty from her. Before she could respond, Ryan stood up, and the boys quickly followed, moving in close for a group hug. As they embraced, Ryan felt the youngest boy tugging at his shirt. Are you going to be our new dad? The boy asked, his voice small but hopeful. Ryan pulled them in tighter, his heart swelling. If that's what you want, I'd be honored, he replied sincerely. Jennifer, watching from the sidelines, got emotional as she took in the scene. Her boys had been missing a strong male role model in their lives, and seeing them bond with Ryan filled her with gratitude. Wiping away a few tears with a napkin, she smiled as her youngest son grabbed a basketball and headed toward the court with Ryan and his brothers for their usual 2-on-2 game. As she was clearing away the trash from their meal, Jennifer heard the doorbell ring. Ryan, someone's at the door, she called out, but the noise from the basketball game drowned out her voice. She quickly dried her hands on a kitchen towel and made her way inside to answer the door. When she opened it, she was stunned to find Lisa standing there. Jennifer stumbled back in surprise, landing on the floor when Lisa forcefully pushed her way inside. What are you doing in my house? Lisa snapped, her eyes wild with frustration. Jennifer got back to her feet, her heart racing, and immediately pushed Lisa back a step. This isn't your house anymore, she said firmly. It's Ryan's now. You're living in an apartment over on Richard Street, remember? You kicked me out of it last night. Ignoring her, Lisa stormed through the house, clearly searching for Ryan. Where's my husband? I've been in jail all night. He should have come to bail me out. Jennifer quickly stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Why on earth would he bail you out? She shot back. He's my husband. It's his job, Lisa insisted, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Jennifer shook her head, her frustration mounting. No, it's not his job to bail you out for public intoxication, Lisa. It's your job to stay out of trouble. She kept her voice calm but firm, making it clear she wasn't going to let Lisa push her around. As Lisa continued to search the rooms, Jennifer stayed right behind her, refusing to let her have her way. I know why you're here, Jennifer said, her patience thinning, but it's not going to work. You pushed Ryan away, and I've been there to support him so he didn't spiral the way my ex did. I'm not letting you drag him down again. She stood tall, hands on her hips, meeting Lisa's gaze head-on. You're in the same spot I was 3 years ago. You screwed up, and now you're losing your husband because you did things no married woman should do. Now, you'll have to face the consequences. Loneliness hits hard, Lisa. You'll come home to a cold, quiet apartment, missing the warmth of a family. I was lucky, I had my kids. But your son's grown, and Ryan's leaving you. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow, being alone at 45, spending your weeknights in an empty home, waiting for the weekend to roll around just so you can chase down some man to keep you company. Lisa's eyes widened as Jennifer continued. Sure, you might find guys with bigger tools, but I've seen enough to know they're usually too wrapped up in themselves and their egos to give you anything real. They're good for one thing, and even then, they're usually not great at it. They can't hold a job, they've got issues, and they're chasing other women on the side. You'll get plenty of men willing to sleep with you because you're still attractive, but trust me, those guys at the bar don't want to be your next husband. They just want to get laid. Jennifer's voice softened, though her words stayed sharp. And at your age? Most of those drunks can't even get it up half the time. Samantha makes it sound like you've been with a dozen guys in the past month, so I figure it's closer to 10 or 12. Since you're here, I'm guessing none of them, including that big tool guy who started all this, turned out to be a good lover, huh? Lisa stood frozen, staring at Jennifer, but she didn't interrupt. Jennifer continued after a moment's pause. I've been holding back for Ryan's sake, trying to give him the space he needs. But not anymore. I'm going after your husband, Lisa. Lisa stayed silent, but her expression said more than words ever could. Jennifer took a deep breath before confessing, I didn't plan for this, but this morning. I made love to Ryan. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. We both know something now, we share something special. He's an incredible lover, so attentive, so passionate. A small smile spread across her face. That's something really rare. Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes as she began to cry. I'm such a fool, she admitted, her voice trembling. You're right. He is wonderful, the best lover I've ever had. I guess I just forgot that. I thought I could have some adventure, that he'd never find out. I was chasing something I thought would be better, a once-in-a-lifetime kind of closeness. She lowered her voice to a whisper, but I already had that, didn't I? Jennifer walked to the patio door, glancing outside at Ryan playing basketball with the boys. He's out there with the kids. I can go get him if you want. Lisa joined her, watching Ryan make a perfect shot. She let out a soft sigh. He's such a good dad. I forgot how much I loved seeing him like this. She turned to Jennifer, her eyes searching for something. Do you love him? I do, Jennifer replied honestly. Today was the first time we've been together like that, but yes, I love him. I don't know if he feels the same way about me yet, but if he chooses me, I'll spend my life making him happy. I know menopause is around the corner, and things will change, but Ryan's the kind of man who'll stick with me through that. I can feel it. Tears streaked down Lisa's face as she listened. I came here thinking I could win him back, even if just for one more night, out of pity or something. But if he's with you, if he's making love to you, then it's over. I know him. He's moving on. She wiped her eyes and turned toward the door. Let him know I'll get a lawyer and sign the papers. Later, Jennifer filled Ryan in on Lisa's visit and her decision to move forward with the divorce. He helped her and the boys pack up to leave. Before they drove off, Ryan leaned in, kissed her gently, and closed the car door behind her. 7 months passed, and Lisa requested a brief meeting with Ryan and his attorney before their court appearance. Ryan understood that she needed closure. Sitting across from him, Lisa apologized for her selfishness and for the resentment she'd harbored. She admitted she had forgotten how amazing he truly was and regretted the time she spent with her friends, knowing he never approved. Lisa, Ryan said, his voice calm but firm, I warned you that married women can't act like they're single. I knew you weren't faithful on those girls' nights. People saw you, even if you didn't realize it. I got pictures, messages, everything over the years, but I ignored them because I loved you. But there comes a point when enough is enough. When I overheard you planning to cheat, I knew we were done. If you didn't want me, that's fine, but I'm not going to stand for disrespect anymore. He stood up, ready to leave. Take care of yourself, Lisa. You'll always be a part of my life because of our son. There will be birthdays and holidays where we'll cross paths. I'll be polite, I'll be friendly, and if there's ever an emergency, I'll be there. But we'll never share a bed again. I've always been faithful to one woman, and that's not going to change. With that, he walked out, leaving Lisa in tears. 5 years later, Ryan stood beside Becca near the basketball court. It was their 5th wedding anniversary, and she had stepped outside for a quiet moment away from the bustling celebration indoors. Ryan's son had grown close to her own boys, and now he was married, with a baby on the way. Her eldest had just graduated and returned home to work alongside Ryan, eager to start his own business. Her middle child had chosen a career in plumbing after trade school. Even with all the joy of the day, Becca felt a bittersweet pang as she thought about her youngest, who was about to leave for college. After nearly 24 years of being a mom, the reality of becoming an empty nester, and soon a grandmother, was sinking in. Ryan wrapped his arms around her, sensing the mix of emotions she was feeling. He hugged her tightly, understanding her need for comfort. With a warm smile, he looked into her eyes. "Remember, I love you," he said softly.